Right then, let's try this again. Oh, I think we might be live. Oh, are we up? We're refreshing. Oh, there we go. I think we're live. Apologies about the confusion there. In our tests, we were using a slightly older version of YouTube Live, and I did not spot the live button. So I apologize for that. There we go. You can test all you want, and then when it comes to it, it all goes wrong. So I am very sorry for that. I'm seeing everyone coming in the chat. Thank you for waiting. I just want to welcome everyone to the YouTube channel and the Red series we're calling the Solitary series. Obviously, a lot of us are isolated around the world, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to keep on interacting with our customers and those that are interested in Red. Sorry for my rather rudimentary setup here in my home. Sorry we haven't got a super awesome recording studio to be in. If you guys like these, we want to do more of them, we can get a bigger and better setup. So let us know in the comments, let us know on social media what you want to see, and we can go from there. So I'll now introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Petts. I am the sales engineer for the EMEA region. I handle a lot of our customer-facing demos, workflow kind of things, events, trade shows. So some of you may have seen me around and about Europe and the Middle East. For those of you that I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, prior to joining Red, I worked as a DIT. So I started off on the low-budget music videos, low-budget short films, trying to scrounge whatever hard drive I could off a very unwilling producer, eventually working my way up, training and assisting on jobs like Transformers, and eventually becoming a fully fledged DIT on projects like Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. I worked on The Crown. I then worked in the digital lab on Kingsman 2 and Holmes and Watson. And that's going to kind of set the table for what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at the benefits of REDCODE RAW, working with it in real time, and establishing a look in Red Cinex. Let me just get one of my fancy overlays up and moving that look into Resolve. So that's going to kind of form the basis of the plan for today. Let's change my screen. For those of you that want to play along at home, we have Red Cinex, a free tool that is available, which can open, you can work with, ingest, view the metadata of these R3D clips, which is what Red digital cinema cameras record to. If you do not own a Red camera just yet, you can download some sample R3D files. We've got some 8K Monstro, we've got Helium, we've got some Gemini, all the way right down to Red 1, which that stuff still looks pretty fantastic. So I reckon we get stuck right into it, and I will open up my demo project. I would just like to thank, while we're waiting for this to open up, the moderators in the chat, keeping you guys all in check. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and oversee what's going on here. So here we are in Davinci Resolve. So again, free bit of software, you can download it on our site. I think probably the first bit of discussion that comes up is playback. Now, for reference, I'm going to be doing everything today on a laptop. This is a 15-inch Razer blade. Sorry, my mods are just telling me that you want to know some specs, so we'll start off with some specs. Razer blade 15-inch, this is the 4K one, and in terms of the graphics card, we are working with a RTX 2080. So not the 2080 Ti, the 2080. We haven't got some big machine hidden off somewhere. This is all playing, I'll lift it up, all off my laptop. So we're going to be showing off how easy these files are to work with, because there are definitely some myths about it being quite tricky. So I think the first discussion point that always comes up when I'm meeting our customers out in the field is playback. And one of the best things about this codec is the raw container, but also the small file sizes. And we'll kind of go on to playback first. So back in 2007, when the Red One first came out, we were shooting one of the first K cameras, we were shooting 4K RAW. Now it was a compressed RAW, and those two words don't commonly go together. You typically hear uncompressed RAW, and shooting uncompressed RAW back in 2007 would have been a pretty monumental undertaking. So by having this compression, it made it a lot more feasible for productions back then. And that same technology is what allows us to be shooting 8K RAW today. And I'll give you a little bit of an overlay. So a lot of people then say, okay, well, why can't I shoot 8K uncompressed RAW? Technology and data and storage has come along a lot since 2007, and that's true. But if we want to shoot uncompressed 8K on a 500 gig card, we'd be getting 1 minute and 30 seconds-ish. I don't think there are too many directors that, having just blocked a 5-minute scene, would be too happy with only a card for 1 minute and 30 seconds. So by using REDCODE RAW, we are able to get anywhere from 50 minutes all the way up to an hour and a half. Because the codec we're using, REDCODE RAW, you can assign how much compression you want on the image, which is pretty awesome. So I'll just get rid of that overlay. I'm getting familiar with my little overlays and stuff there, so apologies for that. And where some of the complexities start to come in is, again, we're talking about a compressed format. So we have to do some degree of decompression on the file as well. So just like when somebody sends you a zip file over the internet, you've got to decompress that, double click it, and it takes a few moments. And that's the same thing with REDCODE RAW. And typically that was done by the computer's CPU. And we will simulate that process now. So here I am in RedCineX. And what I can do is I can actually turn off the graphics card and we can try and play 8K RAW on the computer's CPU. So we'll turn this off and we'll now scrub to the beginning and press play. And you can see it's kind of struggling. Sorry, I'm seeing some more comments about the specs of the laptop. Obviously, for those of you that came in late, I'm playing this on a Razer Blade 15. It is a laptop, it's a 6-core, and it's got the RTX 2080. So as you can see, it was struggling a little bit there. But what we found is that as graphics cards have got more and more powerful over the years, through working with NVIDIA on their latest lineup of RTX cards, we've been able to take that decompression off the CPU and straight onto the GPU. Now, just for proof, this is an 8K clip. Where is it? Here we go, 8192 by 4096. And we're playing back in full resolution, we can see here. So I am going to enable the GPU. We're going to go back to the start of this clip, and we're now going to press play. And instantly, we're getting real-time playback of this 8K file on a laptop. I'm going to keep reiterating this because back in my days of a DIT, it was, I've got to spec up a big machine. I've got to, so this is really awesome for me. But I'm then going to imagine that some of you are then going to be, hey, I don't want to have to spend an extra couple of $1,000s on a new machine or to get an RTX card. Can I still get real-time playback? And the answer is yes, you still can get real-time playback. So I'm going to turn off the graphics card again, and we're going to be working on the CPU. Now, what's great is that we can change the playback resolution of the clip. So we were playing back at full 8K there, and that's a little bit overkill for the situation that we're in. We've got a 4K screen, and then we've got a GUI playback window that's probably somewhere around HD worth of pixels. So we don't need to be playing back the full 35.4 million pixels. So we will drop down to 1/8 resolution, and we'll now press play. And instantly, we're getting real-time playback on the computer CPU. So this is a fantastic option for you guys that maybe you don't even want to have to generate proxies. You can work just with the raw files, drop down that playback quality, and start cutting and making adjustments as you go. You haven't got to waste time converting to a codec that restricts you and doesn't give you the raw flexibility that REDCODE RAW does. So let's go on. I'm just seeing a few more comments coming in there about PC specs. It's always a hot topic. It's always a hot topic. So what I'm going to do is we're now going to flip back to everything full power. What REDCODE are we using currently? Okay. Thank you to my mods for keeping me tuned in. So in terms of the compression, we can look at it in the metadata. So this compression here was REDCODE 8:1. We can go through all of the other clips. We can see what compression they came in at. 8:1 there, 13:1 on this clip, and 13:1 again. So a really big variety of different compression methods. So this is super cool. Was it aspect ratio? Oh, sorry guys. trying to see where all the comments are coming in. But so we've established we can get real-time playback on these machines on a laptop. If you've got a desktop machine, you should definitely be able to get real-time playback if you've got a couple of cores. I think now we'll dive into what's so fantastic about REDCODE RAW. So the first thing that I want to come into is with ISO, the first little bit that we're seeing over here on the right. And this is where we can adjust all of our metadata fields. So let's get this to the right frame and the first bit. So what we're going to do is I've made some adjustments to all of these images, and we're now going to take it back to how it was when it was first ingested. So I'm going to press M. This goes to metadata. And this is how the shot came in. We have gone to metadata, and it's now showing us this was shot at ISO 800. You can see that it wasn't clipping, but there's a couple of reasons why this could have happened. This could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. There could have been a shot. You had freezing cold hands, and you wanted just to get this shot quickly. Knowing that you had REDCODE RAW, knowing that you can change the ISO after the fact. And why that is compared to a lot of other codecs and camera manufacturers, light comes in, hits the sensor, and then various processing happens. So things like ISO, color space, color gamut, and that effectively bakes those metadata parameters into the image. So you can't change your ISO. How that differs with REDCODE RAW is the light comes in, hits the sensor, and that data is saved. Everything else is happening after the fact. So things like our ISO, we can change provided we're not clipped or underexposed. So this is really cool. So what I've done is I've seen this shot, obviously the situation they're in, freezing cold hands, let's get the shot, let's record it. I can see I'm not clipping. And we can come in and then bring the ISO down a couple of stops, saving us to have that discussion with the editor, with the colorist, with the producer about, well, what is this really overexposed shot? Now, other cameras, this would be completely gone. That would be burnt in, and you couldn't do much to save that image. So that is super, super cool. And what's great is that in terms of then, not just having to make these adjustments in Red Cine X, we can actually save this to an RMD. So what an RMD is, I can press here, save RMD. That is a sidecart file. So I can save this sidecart file to my clip. And then when we open this, oh, that's not got an RMD in it. I believe there's one in here. There we go, RMD. When I save this to the RMD file, we bring it into Davinci Resolve. These metadata adjustments will be read, and the clip will come in looking exactly like this. So take a mental reference of how this image looks now. When we bring it into Davinci Resolve, it will look exactly the same as this. So let's move on to some other clips. Let's move on to this awesome space one. I just want to thank all of the guys that have sent us these clips. Down in the description below, we've got some links to the guys that shot these amazing clips. This obviously came from NASA, so thanks to those guys. And when I first saw this shot, I didn't think it was particularly usable. I think it's amazing framing, but when I first saw this, there's one thing that stood out to me that I didn't think made it usable. And our workflow specialist, Dan Duran, said, we've got an amazing new tool to make this image usable. And I'll show you how this image came in looking. So one of the things in space is that there is a lot of radiation. There's a lot of radiation coming in, going through the glass and hitting the sensor and giving us hot pixels or flashing pixels, however you want to call them. And part of my job on Kingsman 2 was during the QC process, I would be looking for hot or flashing pixels on a variety of cameras that we had. I would then have to find the X and Y coordinates and tell the VFX producer, and then they would then have to be painted out. So time and money. If I was a self-shooter, I'd have to figure out how to paint it out myself, or the shot would be completely unusable. So what I'm going to show you is how this shot came in. So I'm just going to make sure that you guys on the stream can see this. I'll just let my stream catch up. You can see these red, blue, and white speckles over the image. These are the flashing pixels. Waiting for that to zoom in. I think we can see them, yes. So this is what you would have to paint out. We can see that there is quite a lot going on there. We press play, and they're staying static because they're burnt in on the image. Now, this fantastic new tool that Dan alerted me to, called the flashing pixel adjustment tool, can actually get rid of all of these in real time for us. So obviously this is a rather extreme scenario. You wouldn't have anywhere near this on a real film set. Occasionally you may have one from any number of sources that can cause this. So we will re-enable this, and we can see that they have now all gone. Because we've got all that raw data from those ones and zeros, from photons hitting the sensor, we can come in and we've now gotten rid of all of those flashing pixels instantly in real time. This is going to save a lot of people a lot of time. I just wanted to show this off to people because I think it's such an amazing tool. Let's come along to this clip over here to show off some other cool things about REDCODE. Seeing a couple more comments come in. Fantastic. Thank you, James, for answering some of the questions there. One of the other cool things is the output transform. So again, I'm going to reiterate it, because we've got all those ones and zeros, after the fact, we can come in and tune how our image looks. So what the output transform does is we can choose the output tone map, which is the contrast within the image, and the highlight roll-off. So I'm going to revert this back to how this shot came in. So this was actually set to high contrast with a hard highlight roll-off. Now this is great for creating a unique look each time you shoot. You know, maybe you're doing a noir film and you want to have a really high contrast, really hard highlights coming in through the windows, lots of smoke and making it feel really moody and getting the effect and look that you want. But then maybe the next job you go on to, you want it's beauty commercial. You want a really nice, soft, organic, filmic look. And you can build that into the image completely in metadata. So for the purposes of this example, let's say, well, it has come in with high contrast and hard, but let's say we then want to change that. We've had a change in the style and the look of the feature, and we want to change it. So we can go to medium contrast with a soft highlight roll-off, and you can see how the image is changing there instantly. We can see how the highlights have now gone a little bit softer and rolling off like a more filmic kind of feel. Now I'll just turn that back to hard again. Hard and then soft. So it's a really fantastic tool to establish a look on set. These adjustments can be made in camera. So let us know if you want us to go through this in the menu on the camera. We can do that. We can do a separate stream where we go through all these setup and menus. But maybe you set it in camera and now you want to change it. You can do it in 2 places. So that's really, really cool. Let's come across to some other clips here. This is a 4K clip. So you've got a surfer hitting some waves here. I'm just going to show you another example of using the ISO to change the image. So if we come back to metadata, this is how the shot came in. And we then boosted it from 500 to 800. And again, make a reference point of how these images look now. And then when we go into Davinci Resolve, it will read off that RMD file. So we'll come back to this shot here. We'll read off that RMD file, and this is how they should be coming in. Some of you who may have shot with RAW containers before, RAW stills, even other RAW video codecs, you'll be familiar with the white balance adjustments. So we've still got those here. So you can come in with this shot. I will show you how it came in. So this was originally shot at 2800 with no tint. So what I've done is I've come in and I've gone, you know what, for the creative purposes of this demo, I want to have 3200 white balance, and let's take a little bit of green out and add a little bit of magenta in there. And this is great because you can be shooting inside, you've got a shot outside, you run outside, set the exposure, press record, and you haven't got to worry about white balance. You know, some people that I've spoken to have said they've got quite lazy because they can adjust their ISO in post, they can adjust the white balance, and they can adjust their look with the output tone map and highlights completely after the fact. So it really simplifies the shooting process as long as you're exposed correctly. If you're completely overexposed or underexposed, pushing and pulling isn't really going to do much. And there's a lot of great tools in camera to ensure that you've exposed the image correctly. So let's go through on a couple more stills here, and we will then bring this into Davinci Resolve. Let's go on to this shot here. Get a frame where we haven't got too much flare. So white balance adjustments, 5600 Kelvin, and we've done a little bit of a tint adjustment. So we come in originally looking a little bit green. We came in and we did a -2 on the tint again. So we can make these adjustments. We can be out in the field, we can be shooting, we go, you know what, I want to make a few quick adjustments to my clip. Bring it in, check through the metadata, make a few changes, save it to the RMD file. So then whenever anybody wants to import it, it's already changed and it's already looking beautiful, and it's a great establishing look to start working from. So I think that kind of summarizes very nicely in in Red Cine X and kind of what we can do in there with some of the great metadata fields. Actually, one thing that I will just alert some of you guys to is our new creative Lut Pack. So on red.com, if you go there, on our download section at the very bottom, we have a new creative Lut Kit. So this is a whole host of, I think, 24 LUTs designed in tandem with the colorist of Mindhunter. These will work on all DSMC2 cameras. You can load them into the camera and obviously in post-production. And this is a really cool way, again, just to start to hone in on that look, and you can use this as an establisher to start to get a really unique look. So we'll just go through a couple of these here. We've got black and white ones. We've got obviously unique names, ST4, all giving us really cool different looks that you can load all in through Red Cine X. But I've decided to go for chromatic here. So I think I'll just make sure if there's any questions here. So just seeing one from James saying, can we explain the difference of ISO and how it hits the red sensor? Okay, so we'll go through that again for those of you that may have missed it. So what's fantastic about the red pipeline, let's just go to a shot where we boosted the ISO. So it was on this shot. Sorry for those of you that have seen this already. So with other codecs, other cameras, light comes in, hits the sensor, and various processing starts to happen. So things like the ISO get added onto the image, white balance, color gamut, color space, those kind of things. And then the image gets saved. So those parts that happen before the image gets saved basically get burnt into the image. They're locked in there and you can't change them after the fact. With REDCODE RAW, what happens is light comes in and we save that raw data. Everything else then happens after the fact. So a really fantastic example of this is those of you that shot with the Red One back in 2007, because the color space is being set after that data has been saved, you can update and change your clips into the latest color space and color gamuts that Red have today. So we can come in, we can go preferences, monitoring out. So if you're on a Red One, you could come in and go, hey, I want to use the latest red, white, gamma RGB, which is the color space that the current sensors can use to capture all of the colors that they can see. So that's a really great example of that a camera from 2007 can utilize the latest technology that we've developed for our latest cameras that we've got here. And likewise, ISO is not burnt into the image. So that's super, super cool. And for those guys that are checking in with their Red Ones, welcome, thank you, fantastic camera. Always love seeing those out and about. So again, I'll just show you a quick example. We go from ISO 800, again, that data is not burnt into the image, down to 250. And make reference of this because we're now going to hop over to Davinci Resolve. So let's exit out of this. And we will now open up Davinci Resolve. Here we go. Obviously, we can go into even more depth on some of these topics. Some of them could probably span entire streams anyway, and we can do that. Let us know what you want to really go in depth, and we can see if we can arrange that. Give us some feedback. Obviously, this is our first one, so we want to see what you guys like, what you don't like, and really tune it for what you guys want to learn and see. So I have already set up a demo project, just loading that in here, and I've, again, already made some adjustments to them, and we will then revert back to how they looked in Red Cine X. So let's go across to our first shot here. And I will now turn off all the adjustments that I made. And you'll see that this is the image that we made the adjustments in Red Cine X. We brought that ISO down. We've saved it to the RMD file. And this is how the image comes in looking. I'll just prove to you that it is the same clip. You can go back and check the file name. B0424, we click on it, we can see that it is 8192 by 4320. It is the R3D, and it's in the footage folder where I left it, where we brought it in from originally. We can see that turning on and off. I've started to do a few adjustments very easily. So obviously that clip felt very bright, brought it into Red CineX, made a few changes ready for our colorist and our editor to see in Davinci Resolve. He's now brought it in and he's gone, fantastic image, looks beautiful. Now we can start making some corrections on this image. We can go along to the image of the space dudes, the astronauts. They're not space dudes. And we can see that that flashing pixel adjustment has followed through. It's seen on the RMD that it needs to be enabled, and Davinci Resolve, because Davinci Resolve uses the Red SDK, those same features are now coming through into Davinci Resolve, which is awesome. We'll now go along to our lumberjack man. Should I call him the lumberjack dude? I seem to be calling everyone dude today. And again, we can see that the reference image had high contrast and hard highlight roll-off. We can see that our soft adjustments have now been applied to the image. And then I've come in and I've gone, from a creative standpoint, I feel like there's a lot of green coming in from this flare. So I'm going to take a little bit of that out, add a bit of magenta, and we've started to really easily build and establish an image. And the reason why it's reading from the metadata is how we've set up our project. So I'm just going to touch on this very quickly because I think a couple of people will be asking about it. Is that the files have been told to come in using the camera metadata. Now you can completely control all of these settings in Davinci Resolve. So if you want to discard any changes that have been made to metadata, you can come in and say, hey, I want it to come in. You can even come in project. Hey, I want to come in and just work in log. I want to come in, I want to work in just DCI-P3. You can come in and make those adjustments really easily. Obviously, this is one specific workflow, that this isn't the definitive workflow. It's just, hey, this is an example of how easy it is to work with the RAW and a couple of ways that it can really easily get set up. You can even come down, hey, I still want to make changes. Maybe I want to revert back to the hard highlight and the high contrast. Let's go to clip. We can come in and we can assign hard highlight roll off and a high contrast again. And we're back to the image, how it looked. We can still make those changes. Again, nothing's burnt in. So I'll just change this back to camera metadata, and it now returns reading off that RMD. Let's go across to the surfer here. We remember how the shot looked in the RMD. That's how that shot looked. Obviously, we boosted it a little bit from 500 to 800 ISO. I then came in and I went, hey, you know what? Because we've got a fantastic 16-bit RAW container, REDCODE RAW files are all 16-bit. We've got billions of colors per channel. I'm going to key this and I'm going to really bring out the saturation here. So I came in, I started to make this shot really pop. I kind of came in, I looked at the sunset here and really started to very easily bring out a beautiful looking shot. You can see a couple more questions being answered by James Lucarelli there. Perfect. Let's come in, look at some of these other shots. So another example, this is how our shot was set up in Red CineX. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to come in and make the face pop a bit more. Now, I was a mid DIT back in my days when I used to work on set. I wasn't a fully fledged finishing colorist. So forgive my node layouts and forgive some of the adjustments that I'm making. It's just for demonstrational purposes. I've come in, I've then lifted the face. I've really picked out the eyes there. I can show you what I've done. Came in and just really starting to make this image pop really easily. And again, in real time. So I'll just show to you that the same playback features are available. So we go to decode options and we've got use GPU for R3D for the decompression and the debayer. So we're getting that real-time playback. I'll go to the edit panel so we can see. We'll go back to that first clip. We press play and instantly we're now locked at 23,976. Super easy inside Davinci Resolve. Now obviously we're streaming, so I'm not sure how playback is coming through On my screen, this is playing back beautifully. I don't know how the YouTube encoding is handling all of that, but just like in RedCineX, this is really super easy. I guess now we'll kind of turn to some questions. I've kind of gone over some of the fundamentals of working with this red footage, working with the 8K. Getting a couple of bits coming in from the team. I'll just restore my chat to see what's going on. Can you address change RMD and Resolve? So in terms of the changes that have been made, so in RedCineX, we save the changes to the RMD file. So in RedCineX, you have the ability to save any changes to an RMD file. Resolve will then see that we're going, hey, I'll just open this bit up again. Hey, check the camera metadata, check that RMD file for any changes, any that are made. Hey, apply it to this clip. So if we just go back to RedCineX, I don't want to save this. We open up our project, we're back into it. We come along to that file that had the high ISO. We'll take it back to metadata. So this is how it was shot. This is how this clip should be being read. But we've come in, we've dropped it down to ISO 320, and in RedCineX, you can right-click and do Save RMD. So those same settings are what enabled us to get those changes in Davinci Resolve. So we'll just exit out of that again, and we'll now go back into Resolve where we left off. Aspect Media, thank you. Bunch of useful tips. That's great to hear. Great to hear it's being useful. Please give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to see going forward. This is very much an introduction into what we can do. Obviously got a very rudimentary setup here, but we can start to dive into, we can get maybe some guests in to start to chat about some of this stuff a bit more in depth. We don't want this to drag on too long. I'm sure we could talk for absolutely ever about dynamic range and everything that I can see kind of going in through the chat there. One thing I do want to kind of go through again is the ability to chop and change between these color spaces. I'll just ping open the preferences here, and maybe we want to work from the log. So we'll go in. I know people do like working from their log. Maybe they've got their own set of LUTs. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to say, hey, all of these clips, I want to manage them myself. I don't want the camera metadata to be adjusting the shots. We can come in, we decode using project, and now I want all of these to be decoded in red, white, gamma, RGB or log 3G10, and we can then do our input-output LUTs. One little tip I will say is by default, these metadata fields are unticked. So what will happen here is if we go to project and don't scroll down to use camera metadata, all of the clips will be defaulted to ISO 320 and 5600 on the color temperature. So make sure you tick these so at least your ISO and color temperature come from the clip. So we've done that. We can either assign every clip to have the chroma noise reduction and the flashing pixel adjust. If we want, we can apply a LUT that was attached to a clip. We can do that if we want to. So now, if I now press save, all of these clips, so because it's REDCODE RAW, we can choose what color space and gamma curve to work in. All of these clips will now change into red log film. Not red log film, that's the previous generation one. Log 3G10, there we go. You can see all of these clips instantly converted into log. If we wanted to, we can now come in, start assigning output LUTs. Obviously, I've made changes to these clips. If we go to our color management, output lookup table, we want to assign a Rec 709 LUT. So we'll do medium contrast soft. And now we're back to where we were. Again, different ways of working. There is no particular right way. It depends how you want to work, how you like setting up your projects. If you want to go into a deeper dive into setting up a workflow, I'm sure we can do that. Let us know. I'll just go back to how I set it up. Go back to Camera Raw. Maybe we want to work in Rec 2020. Maybe we want to start working with HDR. If we had HDR panel, we can set that up. Hybrid log gamma, boom. All of those have now been converted into the Rec 2020 viewing space. So we'll now just convert this back to camera metadata, and we now return exactly to how we were again, because nothing's burnt in, we're all just reading off that raw file. I think now what we'll do is go to some questions. So anything that has been gone on here, has it made sense? Has it been useful? It'd be great for me to know if this has been helping you guys out. Obviously, I want to make everyone feel really excited and confident to work with Red and that they can. I know that there's a lot of misconceptions that it's quite tricky. And I think that over the years, it has become super easy to work with. You know, again, I'll reiterate, this is on a laptop. What we were doing here was on a 15-inch laptop, not some super big machine hidden away. I've got all my cables coming in here. I just want to prove it to you guys because I don't want you to be getting any ideas that we're trying to trick you here. Super, super easy. So I'll just have a little look through some of these questions. There's a lot coming in. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Let's have a little look. It's too fast to write everything down. So we are going to go through this again. So next week we'll be doing this, I think, on the Friday. So you can tune in again. You can come back with any questions after testing it yourself. Obviously, go to red.com/downloads, download some sample R3Ds, download RedCineX and start testing. So you can do that and come back next time. Let's see what's kind of going through in the chat there. An advanced session for people with Red, back from the Red 1 times. We can certainly do that. Doesn't have IPP2. I like the camera. So that's a really good point. So for those of you that are saying, you know, I've got Scarlett W and before that, you still can work in IPP2. So when you come in, you can come in, if we're in Davinci Resolve, pardon me, we come in, project. Now you will have the legacy options. So this will be what you're familiar with. We've got red space, we've got dragon color, red color 3, red color 4. You can just go, hey, IPP2, and because you've got that same raw file that came from 2007 and is what is enabling us to shoot 8K today, you can convert into IPP2. I know you can't do it in camera. That's to do with processing internally, but you can do it after the fact. Let's go back to camera metadata there. Hey, Mark. Oh, has Jared joined the chat? I see Jared. Jared hiding in there. Hey, Jared. Thank you for joining us. Acceptable compression. So compression is quite a big topic, and it's very dependent on what you're doing. So because it's a wavelet compression system, it is kind of visually lossless. Now we can dive in. I could speak about this for a really long time. I do it on kind of all of my events and talks. Depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a long form interview, say you're sat down, you're speaking to somebody for a long time, and you need to get a longer recording duration on your card, you can increase the compression, 10-to-1 potentially, and get, hour and a half plus on a card. And no one's going to really be able to see a visual difference in the image if you're delivering that to a YouTube, to an Instagram. If you're shooting a super high-end project, you've got lots of green screen going on, having as little compression as possible. So on Monster and Helium, you can shoot 5-to-1 compression. That's going to be your best bet because you want to have the most amount of data for keying, green screening, masking, those kind of things. Ask about the LUTs from the Red Kit. Okay, so we've downloaded the LUTs from the Lut Kit. There is a couple of ways to apply LUTs in Davinci Resolve, in camera, and also in RedCineX. We are going to have a specific tutorial to talk about loading LUTs in camera because you can do that. But in terms of loading them into Davinci Resolve, there's a couple of ways. So I don't want to confuse anyone too much, but I'll show you very quickly. So you can either assign it in the color management panel and as a 3D output lookup table. This is typically what I would do. I would then come in and I can apply either a Rec 709 LUT or a LUT that has no Rec 709 in it. So if you're importing your file as log3g10, you can come in and apply one of the creative 709 LUTs that has the built-in 709 and BT1886 transform. Another place you can also do that is per clip. So if you've got a node, I'll just go find an empty node here. Let's just create one. I believe it's Alt S. There we go. Oh no, that's in completely the wrong place. You can then add a LUT. So if we go LUTs, 3D LUT. Where am I? There we go. LUTs, 3D LUT, IPP2. Come on, machine. There we go. We can then load them that way as well. So there's a couple of different areas you can load LUTs. Super easy. Obviously, there's a couple different theories behind where you load your LUT in. We can definitely try and speak to our workflow specialist, Agerton, to really dive into the nitty gritty about building a really efficient workflow. I will just promote James Lucarelli's discussion and stream that he's doing on Friday. Go sign up for that. He's going to be working in Premiere Pro. So for those of you that work in Premiere, feel free to dive into Premiere and learn about the downsampling, scaling in from 8K into 4K, what those benefits are. And he'll be developing a cut that we have on our YouTube channel and recreating that. I've just seen an ACES question come up. I'll very quickly come into that because that's super cool within Davinci Resolve. So in Davinci Resolve, when we go into color management and we go into ACES, CCT, TOE, there's no need to use an IDT. So what happens is Resolve will speak with the SDK and apply the IDT that is needed. You then obviously choose your ODT, your output transform, but there is no need to apply one on the input side of things. The only situation you can see here, we've got red, white gamut log3g10. The only reason why you would need to apply that here is because you may have shot ProRes in log3g10 and you want to use ACES. So in terms of if you're bringing in an R3D, Resolve will pick that up, see it's the SDK, and do that conversion automatically. Hope that might clear some things up for you. Look through a couple more questions here. Is the Friday worth using if you don't use? Is Friday worth attending if you don't use Premiere? I think so. You know, a lot of the things James will be going through will be relevant to other programs as well, showing you cropping in on the 8K, using it to stabilize and the benefits of that. So you can really see where the 8K starts to come out into its own. If you're delivering for 4K, 8K is still going to be a huge benefit for you anyway, and that's a really good showcase of that. Can you import an XML from Premiere Resolve into Red CineX? I have not done that. I can check with Dan. I can come back to you with that. I will make a note on that. I believe you can. I don't want to say anything too wrong. Let's open that up. File, import. We've got EDLs and that kind of stuff in there. One of the guys in the chat might be able to help me out there. I've never specifically done that. We can definitely look into that though. Apologies about that. A really great tool actually, while I'm speaking about data and stuff, is on the Red website. Oh, there we go. James Lucarelli, I'm just saying, yes, you can import XML. Perfect. So one really cool thing, Red DSMC2. Where's the tools bit? So there's a really cool tool on the website. Oh, it's actually finding physical tools. Bing, what is it doing? Red DSMC2 data calculator. My spelling is absolutely amazing. Here we go. So this is a really, really great tool for working out different compression methods and how much space they will take up. There is also an app on iOS and Android for this. So for example, if we want to be shooting on the helium, we want to be shooting 8K widescreen, let's say. We want to be using, let's say, a good middle ground, so 8:1 compression. And let's say, hey, I've got 4 terabytes worth of storage, so 4,000 gigabytes. That's going to get us 526 minutes of recording time. It will also show you the average data rate, which is for 8K RAW, 130 megabytes a second. That's crazy low. And still with that raw container, still all of that flexibility that we just saw in Red Cine and Davinci Resolve. Cameras plus formats, yep, that's a great app as well. I see a couple of people in there in the chat. Anything else while we're here? What is the ideal REDCODE setting? So I touched on this earlier. It is very much subjective in terms of what REDCODE setting is great for the scenario that you're in. If you're shooting in a low light situation, I would suggest using the least amount of compression that you can go to, obviously dependent on your storage requirements. If you need to get more time on the card, if you've only got one card left and you need to get an extra 20 minutes on the card, dropping it down, it's better to get the shot than it is to kind of miss out. Typically, when I shoot, I'll to put a number on it, 8-1 is really, really good. What we can do is we can try and source some side-by-side examples to go, hey, look, this is 5-1, 10-1, and 20-1. Not many people that I've seen have been shooting 20-1. That's a very extreme example on the end of the spectrum, but the sweet spot is very much between 5 and kind of 10-1 is a really good place to sit. On Dark Crystal, we shot 6-1 compression for that show. We didn't shoot 5-1. That was a little bit overkill. I wanted to get a little bit more time on the cards there. Going through, seeing some more comments come in. Oh yeah, so actually, in terms of some of the shots, I'll go back into Red Cinex and we can see that the filmmakers who, thank you for sending us those clips, links down in the description to see who shot these clips. Some of them went to 13-1. So I'll open that back up again. So what's great about Red Cinex is, although I wouldn't say this is a great editor to go and start cutting in, it's great to come back and reference. So if we come back to this shot here, we now come to metadata, we can see what it was shot in. We can see REDCODE 13-1. If we had smart lenses, we could see the lens data coming in. It'd be saying, hey, it was this lens, it was this T-stop. All of that data would be coming through here. So the lens on the Ranger I've got here, the Supreme Prime, that's got the smart lens data that is coming through the lens and being recorded per frame onto that R3D file. What does Netflix recommend for compression? Now, Netflix have a really good tool, well, not tool, but there's a document that specifies the recommendations for every project. For us, when we shot Dark Crystal, again, that's just when we shot, things might have changed. I haven't read that document recently. We went to 6-1. Any more comments kind of trickling in? Dual GPUs. So, I mean, as you can see, this was a single GPU. So I'll just prove it to you again for those of you that may have joined slightly later. The GPU is a single 2080, not a 2080 Ti, not a Titan, not a Quadro. And we were playing back these files. I'll press play in real time on this machine. So depending on what you're doing to the images, if you're having a lot of nodes, a lot of inputs and outputs, a lot of effects going on there, multiple GPUs can help you in Davinci Resolve. So I guess that's kind of up to you in kind of how you want to work, but it is totally possible to work with a single GPU, as we've just shown on this laptop. Thank you, James, for getting the Netflix link there. Fantastic. What do you think about AMD? AMD, absolutely fantastic. We've just seen the Threadripper in their latest video. So Jared and Dan Duran did a video with AMD showcasing how awesome that Threadripper is and just tearing through R3D files. Obviously, we showed earlier trying to play back off the 6 cores of this machine. It couldn't quite get there to play back in full res real time, but that Threadripper can really tear through footage. Might have missed, is Resolve on Windows playing 8K real time full res on Windows? Yes. So we will go back to Davinci Resolve. There we go. For those of you that join us slightly later, that's perfectly fine. Open that up. One thing that I will just flag for those of you that download the latest version of Resolve, by default, it doesn't automatically decompress the files on the GPU. You have to go back in, pardon me, and set that. I'll just show you where that is done. 2 moments. We'll open this file up. Here we go, we're now in. So if you go to Preferences under Davinci Resolve, by default, when you have a new install of Davinci Resolve, this will just be doing the debayer. You have to go to the decompression and debayer. You'll press save. You'll then have to restart Resolve for that to kind of kick in. For reference, this is the free version of Resolve. I'm not using the studio, so everything you saw here is available to everyone when you want to go download Davinci Resolve. So we'll just save that again. See any more questions coming in? You'd love to see it on a MacBook Pro. So it is possible to do on the MacBook Pro. I've got a slightly older, what year MacBook Pro have I got here? I've got a late 2017, and I've been able to play back by dropping that playback quality, obviously not playing in full res, to 8th or 16th or something. I can then still start to work with that footage. But I think we've got a good amount of questions kind of coming in there. If everyone's happy and everyone's learned something, that's fantastic. I think I'll wrap things up there. This has been going on for about 50 minutes. I don't want to keep anyone too long here. I've had a load of fun. It's been great to see your comments coming in. Thanks to the moderators for looking after the chat there and filling in the gaps that I couldn't. I really appreciate everyone coming, and tune in on Friday for James Lucarelli's one. Let us know any feedback you've got, and we would love to keep doing these. So thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. See you guys soon.
We are also very fortunate this day and age, as there is so much great camera choices out there in the marketplace. So why did I choose Red? Look, at the end of the day, I need a workhorse. Something that won't let me down, and it has to tick as many of my boxes as possible. What I use day to day has to fall into 3 major categories. Image quality being number 1. It has to be easy to use, on set and all the way through the post-production process. Third is size and weight. I've never been emotionally connected to brand names or logos. I've just jumped between cameras my whole working career. Always in search of something that can deliver a better image in the least time possible. So my reason for using Red cameras is purely logical. Speed and performance are the 2 things that will give me a creative edge. It's as simple as that. For me, image quality is everything. Some say resolution is not important, but for me it is. I shot a lot of 10 by 8 inch film in my photography days, which was probably and still is the ultimate in resolution. Having all that resolution gave me so many options to reframe and resize with no worries about grain, and yes, the lens had to perform as well, or the resolution was wasted. 8K resolution allows me to push in 100, 200% and reframe. It's like having 2 or 3 lenses on the same camera during the same take. The more resolution and deep data there is in the raw container, the more dynamic range I have, meaning the more colour grading choices I have, meaning the less noise there is. It's simple schoolboy math. You can't argue the science, even though people love to try. I realised many years ago back in my film days that lenses dictate the overall look, density, sharpness, contrast, mixed in with distortion and flares and colour aberrations. You can push and pull all you want in the colouring suite, but you're never going to change a lens's optical look or character. So for me, that's where the look comes from. So if you're after a cinematic look, you have to use a lens that gives you that look. The red sensor will capture all the information and more so, but only you ultimately decide on that final look. This is why I collect so many lenses, and I'm always on the lookout for more. They're all artist brushes at the end of the day. There is no such thing as a bad lens. The camera itself is as easy to use as an iPhone. Actually, it's easier. Actually, you can operate the whole bloody camera on an iPhone. But really, it's as easy as this. Turn the camera on. Frame rate adjust. Color temperature adjust. Focus. Press record. It's seriously that simple. There's something in there for everyone's needs. Anyone that says RED cameras are difficult to use obviously haven't used one. It's not rocket science. Overall, RED has made my shooting life so much easier. I'm actually getting quite lazy with exposure and colour settings these days, only because I don't live in a colour-baked world anymore. In my 35mm days, I had to be like spot on with everything, but now I'm in a raw world, meaning I can change all that information later. If I'm in a rush trying to capture a performance or a shot that I could lose any second, or I've completely disregarded the colour temperature and I'm underexposed a couple of stops, all sorts of things can go down. But I don't really worry at all. There is so much latitude in the raw file that I can easily retrieve my desired look. Framing and capturing the perfect shot is more important to me. I do a lot of visual effects work. 3D tracking can be an absolute bastard on noisy shots, and doing chroma key work can be an absolute pain in the ass also, but the 8K resolution makes it so much easier. And honestly, if I couldn't do any of this on a laptop, the deal would be over. But I can. I change my rigs in nearly every shoot. One day I'm shooting a feature film, the next one I'm shooting a TV ad, then I may send the camera underwater, then I'm putting it on a tracking arm or in a helicopter or hanging off a drone, and then the next day I'm on some round-the-world junket shooting handheld out of a backpack. I have no idea what my next job is, but I know I can configure my RED camera to adapt to most things I throw at it. Being able to edit, resize, reframe and grade 8K RAW all in real time is an absolute godsend for me, as it gives me so much extra spare time to be more creative. At the end of the day, the camera I choose needs to be a Swiss Army knife. But irrespective of how good my tools may be, content will always be king. But you need great tools to capture great content, and that's why I've chosen RED. Have a great day, everyone.